Welcome to the Lawyerist Podcast, a series of conversations about law practice. Each week, we talk with legal entrepreneurs and innovators about building a successful law practice in today's challenging and constantly changing legal market. And now, here are your hosts.
Hi, I'm Sam Glover.
And I'm Aaron Street, and this is episode 196 of the Lawyerist Podcast, part of the Legal Talk Network. Today we're talking with our trademark lawyer, Erik Pelton, about his boutique practice and his approach to social media, client onboarding, and a bunch of other stuff.
Today's podcast is brought to you by LawPay, Smokeball, and New Law Business Model. We wouldn't be able to do this show without their support, so stay tuned, and we'll tell you more about them later on. So I've got something this week, how to find out what's new on Lawyerist. People often ask how to find out what's new, or they're trying to figure out whether or not we're publishing things. So there are a couple of options.
Yeah, it's interesting. We spent 8 years being known as just a blog, and therefore I think a lot of people got in the habit of thinking about Lawyerist in the framework of, I wonder what's new on Lawyerist today. And in the last couple of years, as we've been building out the podcast and our work in YouTube and video and our Facebook groups and our paid communities and our events and other things, we've de-emphasized the importance of new content on the website to some degree and have been trying to refocus on quality and context and a bunch of other things. And so the website keeps iterating and there's shitloads of content on it, but the emphasis is not always on new, which is a lot of people to say, I can't find what's new.
However, we've made it easy. You can now always go back to the front page. There are basically 4 things that we are regularly publishing. That's podcasts, obviously, which you already know about. New Lens episodes, that's our YouTube channel. Downloads, which are checklists, cheat sheets, ebooks, white papers, that kind of thing. And our community blog posts. And all of those are always highlighted on the front page. So if you want to see the newest one, the front page is the easiest place to see it. But if you have joined our insider community, which you can do on also from the front page, if you aren't a member, it's the big splash call to action at the top of the page. It's free, and if you join that, we will send an email letting you know about what's new. And if you're a solo or small firm lawyer in the US or Canada, you can join our Facebook group, where I do a fun Facebook Live Monday morning meeting every Monday morning at 9:30. You can tune in later if you want, but we'll talk about what's new on Lawyerist, what events we're going to be attending, that kind of stuff. And sometimes I drag in Marshall or Aaron or Lindsay to talk about what's new.
Yep. So if you are someone who has been wondering, why can't I figure out what's new on Lawyerist anymore?
There are a few ways.
You totally can.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so if you are wondering, if you want to check in regularly, try one of those options or just follow us on Twitter because that works too. Now we've got a brief sponsored conversation with Alexis Neely from New Law Business Model, and then we'll jump into my conversation with Erik.
Hi, I'm Alexis Neely. I'm the founder of New Law Business Model, where we teach lawyers a new law business model that I created when I was in private practice, which allows lawyers to build high 6- and 7-figure law practices while having great lives, making a real difference in their clients' lives by serving families and small business owners in a new way.
Hi, Alexis. Thanks for being back with us today. So let's talk about, maybe you can tell me, how do you think lawyers should approach law practice so that they're getting what they want and need out of it so that they can accomplish their life goals, so that you can align that business with personal and get what you need out of life?
Absolutely, yeah. And I really think that this is what it's about when it comes to building a life and law practice you love. It's not something that they teach us in law school. And honestly, it took me 10 years really to figure this out, because at first I built $1 million a year revenue generating law practice because that's what I thought success was. But for me, that actually wasn't what success was. Even though ultimately I was able to go into my practice just 3 to 4 days a week, I think I would have ended up long-term really being much happier with about a $650,000 a year practice, less staff, because $1 million a year law practice requires quite a bit of staff, and working virtually, which is ultimately what I've created for myself now, which is a virtual practice where I get to be with my children a lot. But I had to go through 10 years of really trying to figure this out and spending a huge amount of my time and energy and attention, which are non-renewable resources, in service to really sleepless nights, wondering if I was on the right path, wondering should I make that next investment, should I not, and all of this because I didn't understand what it is that I understand now, which is that when you have absolute clarity about what it is that you want to create. And this goes for any business, not just lawyers, although I have very specific expertise related to lawyers just from my own experience in working with thousands of lawyers now. But when you have absolute clarity about what it is that you want to create, then your mind is able to relax. The stress that keeps you up at night is able to go away. You're able to use your time, energy, and attention really wisely and make all of the best investments to get you exactly where you want to go. And it can happen very quickly. What I've identified is that it really comes down to knowing for lawyers exactly how many clients you need to engage each month and at what average fee. If you can get clear about that, then you can learn to price and package and present your services in an entirely new way. And you can work backwards to use your calendar to map out everything that you need to be doing on a monthly, weekly, daily, and even momently basis so that you're no longer wondering, what should I be doing with my time? Am I doing the right things? Should I make that investment? Am I getting paid enough? All of those questions can be answered, and then your entire nervous system relaxes. Your life and law practice come into alignment, and you can love being a lawyer and see your law degree as your most valuable asset.
So it sounds like the money map is sort of the formula for your law practice so that you know when you're doing enough, how much you need to do across all aspects of it. How does it actually work?
Yeah, and really what you need to be doing. I see that so many lawyers are in this spin, this mind spin, because we didn't learn it in law school. We didn't learn it in the big law firm. And so when you come out, you really need a streamlined way to learn about your business and where to be making investments. So I took this process that I created, not just for lawyers, and I applied it specifically to the legal field and created what I now call the Money Map for Lawyers. It's a 5-module program that guides you to total clarity on what you really want your life and law practice to look like. And as I said, what I found is that everything begins with clarity, and that's where most people, lawyers included, are wasting so much energy. All that time you spend wondering if you're on the right path, whether you're taking the right actions, if you're getting paid enough, and whether you should make that next investment. Well, that's a huge amount of waste. And when you know exactly what you want, you can stop the stress over wonder and worry and just do exactly what you need to do to create it. So the Money Map for Lawyers gives you back your mind, gives you back your time, gives you back your energy and your attention so you can do just the things that you need to do and sleep well at night, knowing that you are on track to having the life and law practice that you really want.
So if listeners are interested in learning more about New Law Business Model and the Money Map, you can find more information and learn about it at newlawbusinessmodel.com/lawyerist. And of course, we'll include that link in the show notes.
Yeah, and not just learn about it there, but actually you get to do it for free. I'm giving this to the legal community as my gift of my 10 years of trying to figure this out for free, because I really want lawyers to see that your law degree is your most valuable asset, bar none.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Alexis.
My name is Erik Pelton, and I practice trademark law in Falls Church, Virginia.
Hi, Erik. Thanks for being with us today. It is worth mentioning that you are also our trademark lawyer at Lawyerist.
Yes, full disclosure.
And actually, that is the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast. I mean, we've known each other through TBD Law and Lab, but I liked the experience that we have had as your client, and so I wanted to talk to you more about it.
That's terrific. I enjoy helping all my clients, but particularly when I get to work with other lawyers who trust their business with my practice, I find that tremendously rewarding.
Well, and so here's what I particularly liked is, you know, we needed to get some trademarks. We had never stopped to trademark Lawyerist or Lawyerist Lab or TBD Law or anything. And so we needed to get it. And I think the process was Aaron or I emailed you and said, hey, can we trademark these things? And you said, yes, here's what it'll cost. And you sent us a link or an invoice that we could pay electronically. And we did. And then you sent us some updates and then said, congratulations, here's your trademark. And so we basically just like got a trademark by contacting you, which was awesome. And I guess I wanted to just spin off of that and talk more about it. So like, what is your philosophy? How did you decide on the way that you serve clients? And, tell me more about your approach.
Yeah, my goal obviously is to make it easy, to make clients happy, to make it easy for the client and for myself. And it really started from the beginning when I recognized that trademark law was underserving small businesses, and that
You mean underserving, like they aren't getting enough trademarks?
Correct. Back 20 years ago.
Yeah.
As the internet was just growing, the only option really to get advice for trademarks was to either buy a dummies book and do it yourself, or to go to a big law firm downtown that had an IP department and pay thousands of dollars. There was very little in between. And, I think I recognized that the internet was changing everything, and that flat fees and efficient services could build a model that would serve a significant portion of what was in between doing it yourself and hiring a big law firm.
Do you think of your firm as a virtual law firm?
I do not think of my firm as a virtual law firm, actually.
Yeah, I was wondering, because like the way that you delivered the service to us meets almost all of the requirements, I think, of people who are virtual and think about that. I mean, we've talked to you in person, but not regarding the representation. It all took place over email and was super slick, and that's pretty virtual.
And that is the case for 95% of my clients. Okay. And even some of my clients who are local, I never see in person. So I guess I operate as a virtual firm, but I think of myself as more tangible because I like to touch things and I like to have meetings in person with my staff. And I am adapting to the world of video and file sharing and all of these things, but I'm still more of a tangible person.
So how big is your team?
My team is myself, one associate attorney, and one paralegal.
Gotcha.
Who are both full-time.
And all trademarks.
99% of what we do is trademarks, right?
What's the other 1%?
The other 1% is contract negotiations or domain names, things that relate to trademarks but aren't directly.
One of the things I've been thinking about recently, and part of it was because, Clio just issued its new legal trends report, and they asked a whole bunch of new questions about, kind of what lawyers want versus what clients want. And my expectation going into hiring a lawyer is usually that they're going to make me want to come to their office and sit down and have a conversation. And I was mindful of this recently when my financial advisor, who I love, has an assistant that insisted on scheduling me a phone call to tell me 3 things that he could put in an email but wanted to talk about. When you think about, what that relationship needs to look like, why don't you make your clients come and sit down with you or have a phone call with you as an introduction? Because lots of lawyers, that seems to be the way they approach it.
Right. Part of it is the nature of the work, that the trademark application process is, fairly transactional. Mm-hmm. And with my experience, I'm generally able to sense or to see by looking at web pages or examples of how marks are used exactly what is needed. And
so you don't need to ask a lot from me. You just need the mark.
Correct. Now, part of it with our projects was that we did have a bit of a relationship beforehand, so it made it easier for both of us to trust each other. Mm-hmm. But, in general, I know that clients want to hire an attorney and have it taken care of. And yes, ask important questions if there are important decisions to be made, but otherwise don't bother me with the minutia. Just provide me updates, be timely, and provide great service. And that's what I try to do.
Does that bother you? Because I know when I talk to lawyers about, the ever-present fear of the robot lawyer or something like that, one of the objections I often get is, but my relationship with my clients. Now, we had a relationship going in, but I assume if I would have emailed you out of the blue and said, I want these trademarks, you also would have handled it, and we would have no relationship other than the transaction. Does that bother you? Do you think it weakens your bond with your clients?
It doesn't bother me because I think that by providing great service, even though these transactions are relatively brief, I actually build relationships, because a great thing about practicing trademark law is that so many times there are additional marks to cover in the future, or new businesses or spin-offs, or brothers and sisters who start businesses. So over time, I develop long-term relationships with many clients.
I suppose in a way, the trust that you build is different. Like, I would feel confident sending someone to you because I know that they'll just get a quick trademark. I mean, it'll be easy. One of the things we had used another trademark lawyer before, and one of the things we got from that trademark lawyer was, I'm not super familiar with the process. My understanding is it goes to the examiner, and then half the time you get back something that says, we're investigating this further. Is that roughly right?
Sure.
Yeah. for a layperson, close enough for me. And before, we got a whole like legal analysis of that stage that made me feel like, okay, do I need to do, like, are we in settlement negotiations with the examiner? Is there something I need to do? And it was also a pretty smooth process, but there was that hitch where I was like, I think I've gotten too much information at this point. Whereas with you, it was nicely scoped to, hey, this thing happened, just letting you know. And I was like, cool.
I think that's a great example. I've seen those letters that or memos that other firms send, right? They, I think, often want to make sure they're covering their behind and presenting every nuance and every possible outcome. And it turns into, a 3, 4, 5-page letter that is very difficult for the client to understand. And I just try to boil it down to the key information, so that they're in the loop and can make any important decisions, but not burden them with so much information. That what I found that ended up happening when I did do that early on is they would just ignore the letter because they didn't quite understand it. They were too busy or embarrassed to call and ask questions, and they would just ignore the letter. And then months would go by and we would have a deadline, and I would have to prod them to get the information that I needed.
I guess my assumption is that you'll tell me if I need to make a decision or worry about something. And I'm not going to make a decision or worry about anything unless you tell me.
Yes.
But I guess I was getting at like the trust of like, no, you can go to Erik. He'll handle it smoothly and easily. Not he'll insist on sitting down with you and trying to build a relationship and essentially overworking what should be a pretty simple transaction.
Right. That's the beauty of charging flat fees for the value of the service offered, is that I have a inherent motivation to make it as efficient as possible as well. It benefits both of us.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm just realizing we need to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And we come back, I want to talk more about some of the meta around your firm, how you've approached marketing and client onboarding and communication and your systems. So we'll be back in a minute.
Smokeball practice management software exists to streamline small law firms and reduce the stress of running a small business. With Smokeball, your firm is much more organized, productive, and profitable, meaning you and your staff can breathe easy with less stress. Visit smokeball.com/lawyerist today to learn more and book a demo. Like what you see? Lawyerist podcast listeners are eligible for 50% off onboarding. With Smokeball at your firm, it's less stress and more success. If you're not 100% happy with your law practice right now, chances are you want more. More income from your practice, more fulfillment from your work, and more freedom to enjoy your life. There's a new law business model that is allowing passionate attorneys to reclaim their lives and love practicing law again. Alexis Neely has been training lawyers for over a decade on the new law business model she created to build her own $1 million law practice. And now, the lawyers she has trained in that new law business model have their own high 6- and 7-figure law practices, all without sacrificing time with their families and only working with clients they love to serve. It is possible to experience the exhilaration of a thriving law practice, do the most meaningful legal work, have a real impact in your clients' lives, and have complete control over your schedule. Discover this new law business model now by watching the free video workshop series at newlawbusinessmodel.com/lawyerist. Did you know that attorneys who accept online payments get paid 39% faster on average than those who use traditional payment methods? With LawPay, the only payment solution offered through the ABA Advantage program, you can easily accept client payments online, via email, or in person. No equipment needed. Visit lawpay.com/lawyerist to sign up and get your first 3 months free. Trust the only payment solution developed for attorneys and recommended by 48 state bars. LawPay.
So we're back, and Erik, I have noticed a bit of these various things, but I'm curious to what is your approach philosophically to how you market your practice and maybe how that flows into how you onboard your clients?
My approach is to present myself as an expert and to not be shy about sharing content, sharing information. I think that the more that I share, the more it shows that I'm an expert, and it also shows that there's a lot of nuance and a lot of experience that someone cannot easily replicate or even read all of the blog posts I've written about a subject and do it themselves.
Yeah, so I don't read your blog. Maybe I should. I've glanced at it in preparation for this podcast. But like most of our TBD Law and Lab members, I follow you on Twitter. What I see there is you are frequently tweeting about goofy trademarks that you've found or trademarks that are in the news. And it has given me an impression that, I guess it's also given me the impression that you're an expert at what you do, but it's given me the impression that you geek out about trademark law, which maybe is an even better impression. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's interesting because the Twitter audience is more other attorneys and fellow trademark attorneys. And so geeking out over those things is more fun and more appropriate there. Whereas the blog content and articles are generally more for the business audience, the potential client or existing client. And so I am always trying to balance those two audiences because while it's fun to geek out with other attorneys, they don't generally refer me a huge amount of business, but it does help build all of this content and keep my social media, active, and it is enjoyable as well.
So that's a really good point. So thinking in terms of different audiences, so like on Twitter, you're mostly sort of in the networking audience of peers, of other lawyers. Your blog, you say you're blogging mostly for other businesses, and I totally see that. Like your blog posts look like they are geared to be interesting to businesses. Are you thinking of those mostly as like people are searching for those topics, or are you thinking about it as building a base of readers, or both?
Primarily searching for those topics. There's a lot of times I write a blog post and I don't care if nobody reads it this week or this month because I know that a year from now somebody might be searching for something specific and come back.
Money in the bank, basically.
And it also provides content, I send a monthly newsletter by email to all my clients. I'm putting together a collection of articles and blog posts into a book format. So all of the content, can be used for multiple purposes, of course.
When you think about, because I noticed you're also doing video now, when you think of your video audience, what is the audience you have in mind there?
The video audience is also the business potential client. And I've been doing that for several years and I've found great success with it.
Say more about that, because I am very curious and still trying to figure out. I mean, videos do sometimes show up in search queries, so I guess people are finding those when they search for things. It's not my hypothesis that there are very many people out there who are regularly sort of subscribing to business content on YouTube, but I'm not sure.
No, it's not a lot of subscribers, I don't think. I mean, I have several hundred subscribers on YouTube, but it's having the videos available so that if someone comes to my website and they want to explore who I am, they might click on one. And then to go back to where we began, which is I want the client to have trust in me that they're going to pay me something and I'm going to take over and make it happen and make it worth their money and make it easy. I've found this goes back now, 5, 6, 7 years to when I first started doing videos, them seeing my face and hearing my voice before they ever email me or pick up the phone to call me makes a huge difference in feeling like they know who they're working with, that they're willing to trust them. When people cold call me all the time, more than half the time, it's because they say, I just watched one of your videos.
That's interesting. And I'm seeing that your videos actually show up quite high in search results for, say, trademark infringement. So great. It's very cool. What about client onboarding? My experience may have been typical or not. I'm not sure because we already knew each other. But what's your philosophy around getting clients in the door after first of all, after they've contacted you, but once they've signed a retainer and decided to hire you, how do you bring them on board?
It's very simple, and it's not terribly virtual yet, but we basically just have a one-page fee agreement and a one-page questionnaire of information that we need about the business and the trademarks. And, sometimes I'll need more information and I can follow up, but it gets me the essential information to open the file, start studying it, and 90% of the time file the applications and do the work. Another benefit of the way I've modeled my fees with flat fees, all-inclusive paid up front, is that I don't open the file. I don't do any work, spend any time on it until I've been paid.
Which is so key. But so you don't do a whole lot of like welcome to the firm, trying to like make somebody feel great about hiring you. You just get the work done.
Right. I mean,
which I don't mean as a criticism. Like I think there's value in like welcome to the family approach, but there's also value in, okay, I'm going to get your work done and make this thing happen.
Yeah. I send them either a receipt or just a welcome email, and the receipt comes with the welcome email. And it says, well, we're happy to be working with you on this project. Here's where you can find more information about us online, and we'll be in touch soon, with an update on your project.
So we talked about this briefly, but where I was appreciating your just enough, not too much communication What is sort of your philosophy of how you approach communication throughout the representation so that there's just enough, not too much?
Yeah, we try to be proactive. And so that anytime that there's a major status update, we send something to the client, and we try to make it clear that this is either merely informational for your records. Feel free to ask us if you have any questions, or this is something you need to look at. It needs your attention, and we need to either discuss, or you need to get back to me with the information that's needed. And I try not to bombard them with too many communications, or, as I said, too much information, too detailed of an analysis. And then I have systems so that, if I sent the email and 2 weeks go by and I haven't heard anything and I'm waiting for a response, that I'll follow up and eventually follow up with a phone call and make it happen.
Very cool. What kind of systems do you use? What's the software that you rely on to get things done?
So because I started this in 1999, before there were any real tools out there, at least any real tools out there that were built for small firms and built for IP firms.
Now my brain's going, I'm like guessing what you're going to mention next, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine? I built my own software.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first associate who worked with me had a computer software degree. And so we, sketched out what we wanted for a docketing system and client management system. And I hired somebody who still, works as a contractor for me to update and tweak the software. So we built our own software, and then we've stuck with it because it works great. It goes out, it connects with the USPTO because they have APIs available.
Wow.
With their data, and it generates reports for me, and it keeps track of client information, and it keeps track of updates. So that's my primary tool. I do use Outlook a lot also, but really that's my primary tool.
So I got to ask, how much did you spend to build it, and how much do you think you spend maintaining it?
Yeah, so I spend between $10,000 and $20,000 a year to maintain it.
Okay.
And I think I spent about $70,000 in the initial kind of burst.
Wow.
To build it. So for a small practice, that was a lot.
Yeah, it feels like a lot for a 3-person practice. Do you have your eye on anything else where you're like, you kind of constantly think about switching, or is this just too well suited to your practice?
No, I do think about alternatives, although I haven't researched them in depth yet. But I know that Alt Legal is sort of an IP specific platform. And I know that Clio has, I have many friends who use Clio and speak wonders of its tools. So someday I'll have to make a decision.
I like that you built your own though. And I mean, that feels like an expense, but again, for listeners' benefit, I always try to let's pull back and see really how expensive is it. If you're worried about a few $1,000s a year, you're probably not as successful as you ought to be. But I think that's super cool that you just built your own. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. And it allowed me to handle a volume that nobody else was handling back then. Now, there's some others that handle it, but to be a small firm and handle, 300 or 400 matters a year in trademark filings, was no insignificant feat 10 years ago.
No, that's huge. I mean, that feels like a lot of stuff. And is that roughly the current volume you're at, or?
Yes, that's roughly the volume where we've been at. There's been times when it's been a little higher, times when it's been a little lower, but usually we file between 300 and 400 applications a year. And we're involved in litigation and disputes as well, related to trademarks.
Oh, I was going to ask, do you follow the trademarks through their life cycle, or do you, so say more about that.
Yeah, so we get involved in oppositions or cancellations or litigation, and those, of course, require a different level of service and require conference calls and hand-holding and a lot more in-depth relationship with the clients.
So you're obviously not trying to squeeze those into the same model you use for trademark prosecution. Or do you call it trademark prosecution? What do you call it?
Yes, that is the right term.
All right.
Yeah. Just touching on that, while I don't try to squeeze them into the same model, I try to also build efficiencies, so, conducting discovery, writing motions, obviously, the more time you invest in creating templates or systems to build them for you, the more time you're going to save in the long run.
Do you also do flat fees on litigation?
So what I do on litigation much of the time is like a flat monthly or quarterly fee.
Oh, wow. Cool. So it's just they're buying a chunk of your firm's time and attention for as long as it takes that thing to play out.
That's right. And some quarters it may be, heavy on time if there's a depositions or responding to discovery responses. Some quarters it might be a little bit lighter on time, but in the end, having gone through enough cases, it all balances out to where I'm getting compensated fairly and the client's getting a great deal. And most importantly, the client's getting a predictable deal because they're never burdened by, 1 week where you could run up $10,000 in hourly expenses.
So I think it's not an entirely unique billing model, but it is pretty unusual. I haven't met a lot of lawyers who are billing monthly fees as litigation unfolds or quarterly fees. So I'm curious, how do you decide on what that fee ought to be?
It's a bit of supply and demand. It's honestly probably underpriced, but it's based on how much work it is on our end. And it's based on wanting to be able to represent and help these small business clients that otherwise may not have any other alternatives. And, for better or for worse, I think that's what's kept me from raising the fees over the years, because I'm sure I could raise the fees and lose some clients, but do less work and net come out the same in the end, but there would be less businesses that were then able to afford to deal with these disputes. Mm-hmm. So that is a difficult decision.
Have you learned any important lessons about billing in this way that somebody else would want to know before they gave it a try?
No, I've very, very rarely had any issues or complaints from clients. Of course, as with, all billing matters, it's just clear communication from the start about what the expectations are and how the billing is going to work is the important thing.
Very cool. I like to ask this when I chat with practicing lawyers, just sort of generally about their practice. Is there a problem you're working on trying to solve right now?
So there's two things I'm working on right now. In terms of my practice, I'm working on finding a new tool to manage discovery in these litigation cases where you could have, hundreds or thousands of pages and deposition transcripts and things like that, and I've just been skating by using Adobe and other tools for now and looking into actually investing in discovery software.
Gotcha.
So that's from the practice management. From a more overall, I'm working on trying to set aside the time to finish writing my book that I'm about halfway through. And I've been working on for about 6 months and talking about for about 6 years. And I really just need to get to the finish line because I think it'll be an exciting project once it's done.
So is this a book intended to be read by your potential clients then?
Yes.
Cool. How are you intending to use that? Like I've met some lawyers who every new client gets a copy of the book or...
Yeah, it's, it's a lot for promotional purposes and presenting yourself as an expert. And, again, if nobody reads the book, but people hire me because they see that I've written a book, then I'm pleased with that. But it will have a lot of great content in it. And I will probably give it out to valuable clients. One of the things I do in my marketing is every year or so, I send a nice gift to my top clients that have been with me for the longest or that have hired me for larger projects. So because I have a sunflower marketing theme, I often will send sunflower seeds or something to do with flowers and plants. I've sent coffee mugs with some, gourmet coffee in the past, those kind of things.
Nice. I like the sunflower motif, by the way. It's like bright and happy, as opposed to the typical staid lawyer website. So
yes, there's no scales of justice on my site.
I think my kids grew the sunflower seeds last year. So
nice.
I should clarify, by the way, for listeners, this. I'm not doing this podcast as a quid pro quo. We paid Erik to do our trademarks. I just really liked the experience, so I wanted to have him on the podcast, ask him more about it. It wasn't in exchange for sunflower seeds.
I never asked to be on the podcast.
But well, cool, Erik. Thank you so much for being with us today. I have loved hearing more about how you approach this, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sam.
Make sure to catch next week's episode of the Lawyerist Podcast by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast app. And please leave a rating to help other people find our show. You can find the notes for today's episode on lawyerist.com/podcast.
The Lawyerist Podcast is produced with help from Lindsay Calhoun and edited by Paul Fisher. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by Legal Talk Network. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.